What happens when America's friendliest morning anchor finally loses his patience with a royal guest who refuses to play along? On the Today Show, millions of viewers tuned in expecting a light-hearted interview with Prince Harry. Instead, they witnessed one of the most explosive confrontations in live television history. What began with smiles and polite banter quickly turned into a tense battle of words. And by the end, the unthinkable happened. Harry was told to leave the set. The Today Show studio buzzed with its usual morning energy. Lights warmed the iconic set. Crew members hustled in headsets, and mugs of coffee steamed on the table. At the center, Roker, the veteran anchor with his trademark charm and warm smile, flanked by his co-hosts. It was a typical morning in New York, except that today's guest wasn't a Hollywood actor or a best-selling author. It was Prince Harry. Harry entered in a tailored navy suit, tireless with the casual confidence of someone used to global attention. The audience applauded politely as he shook Al's hand and settled into the guest chair. For a moment, everything felt perfectly ordinary. A royal on American morning television, ready to chat about new projects, family life, maybe even drop a funny anecdote. "Good morning, Prince Harry," Al said brightly. "Great to have you with us here in the studio. How are you feeling today?" Harry gave a quick smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I feel fine. It's not every day I do one of these shows, though I imagine you'll try to make it into a circus." The audience gave an awkward chuckle, unsure whether it was a joke. Al brushed it off with a laugh. "Well, we'll try to keep the circus animals outside," he quipped. "Let's start with something simple. You've been busy. New ventures, appearances, your charitable work. Tell us what's driving you right now." Harry leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. "What drives me is doing things on my terms, not on the monarchy's terms, not on the tabloids' terms, and certainly not on the media's terms." The room stiffened slightly. It wasn't a hostile answer, but there was an edge in his tone. Al nodded calmly. "Fair enough. Speaking of doing things on your terms, you and Meghan have taken some bold steps in redefining what royal life means. How has that transition been?" Harry's smile faded into a smirk. "I wouldn't call it redefining. I'd call it surviving. And frankly, the people who ask about transition don't understand what it means to escape a gilded cage." The audience shifted uncomfortably, the energy slipping. Al, ever the professional, pressed on with his usual warmth. "Escaping a gilded cage. That's a powerful image, but I'm sure our viewers are curious. What does day-to-day life look like now for you and Meghan? Parenting, work, family time?" Harry straightened in his seat, voice sharp. "Parenting is private. Unlike some people, I don't parade my kids for the cameras. So forgive me if I don't give you the soundbite you're fishing for." The air in the studio thickened. A ripple of murmurs spread through the live audience. Al's co-host, sitting just off camera, shifted in his seat as though ready to intervene. But Al simply smiled, his tone still kind. "Of course, no one's asking for a soundbite. Just giving you space to share what you'd like about family life." Harry's eyes narrowed slightly. "Family life is family life. End of story. If people can't grasp that, maybe they should look at their own families instead of obsessing over mine." The audience gasped softly at the sharpness of his words. Al gave a small chuckle, trying to ease the tension. "Point taken. Let's pivot then. Your charitable foundation has been in the spotlight. You've spoken a lot about mental health awareness. That's an area where you've been a real voice for change." For the first time, Harry leaned forward, his tone firm but tinged with arrogance. "Yes, I've been a voice for change because, unlike most, I've actually lived it. And frankly, I'm tired of people questioning my sincerity, as if I'd make something like this up for attention." The statement hung heavy. No one in the room had accused him of exaggerating, yet his defensiveness filled the air with static. Al's co-host smiled nervously and shifted his mug. Al nodded calmly. "No one's questioning sincerity here, Harry. We all know these issues matter deeply to you, but it does raise a question about balance. How do you handle privacy while also speaking so publicly about personal struggles?" Harry smirked again. "Balance? That's rich coming from the media. Privacy doesn't exist when people like you keep demanding access. You can't ask about balance when you're part of the imbalance. This time the audience murmured more audibly. Al, still trying to keep things light, chuckled again. "You're keeping me on my toes this morning," he said, lifting his coffee mug. "I'll have to drink more coffee to keep up." Harry didn't laugh. Maybe drink less coffee and ask better questions. The crowd reacted with a collective gasp. Al's co-host's smile froze. The energy had shifted completely. Al, with remarkable restraint, smiled once more and leaned in. "Well, that's what live television is about. A conversation. And we've only just begun." But as the segment cut to a brief commercial break, the audience whispered among themselves. Something was already unraveling. This wasn't going to be just another royal interview. It was about to become a showdown. The commercial break ended, and the studio lights flared again. The audience, still buzzing from the sharp exchanges in Part 1, settled into uneasy silence as the cameras rolled. Al Roker flashed his signature smile, but even through the polished warmth, a flicker of tension lingered. "Welcome back to the Today's Show," he said, turning to the camera. "We're here with Prince Harry, talking about his work, his journey, and his thoughts on life beyond the palace." The audience applauded softly. Harry nodded stiffly, leaning back in his chair with his arms folded. He looked less like a guest on a friendly morning show, and more like a defendant in a courtroom who decided to fight the judge. Al pressed forward with practiced ease. "Harry, I want to ask you about something the public has been fascinated by. You've spoken before about stepping away from the royal family to build your own life. What has been the greatest challenge in carving that independent path?" Harry tilted his head, smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "The greatest challenge dealing with questions like that. Everyone acts like leaving was some kind of heroic act or catastrophic betrayal. It was neither. It was me deciding I was done being a mascot for an outdated institution," the crowd murmured. Al nodded slowly. "I hear you. But a lot of people still see you as deeply tied to the monarchy, whether you like it or not. Do you feel any sense of responsibility to that role?" Harry chuckled dryly, shaking his head. "Responsibility? I've spent my entire life being told what my responsibility is. To wave at crowds, to cut ribbons, to smile while others lived real lives. I owe nothing to the crown. If anything, it owes me." The sharpness of his tone landed heavily. Audience members exchanged uneasy glances. Al, ever the diplomat, leaned forward with a lighter tone. "So, would you say you've closed that chapter completely? No chance of returning to royal duties in any capacity?" Harry snapped back without hesitation. "Not unless I hit my head and forget everything I've learned. Why would I go back to a family business that feeds me to the wolves and then pretends they're protecting me? No, Al, that chapter isn't just closed. It's burned." The live audience gasped. Al's co-host shifted in their seats, exchanging looks that said, "Did he really just say that?" Still, Al smiled, though his eyes had tightened. "Strong words. Let's talk about your family life, then. Your children, Archie and Liette, how are they adjusting to life here in the U.S.? Harry's expression darkened. "Why should I answer that? You people always want to pry into the private lives of children. My kids don't exist for your audience's entertainment." Al raised his palms gently. "Of course, no one's asking for details that compromise privacy. But many parents watching at home admire how you balance public work with raising young children. It's a chance to share something meaningful." Harry scoffed. "Balance? That's another media buzzword. Here's the truth. I don't need to explain how I raise my children to strangers drinking coffee in their pajamas. My family isn't your morning show filler." The crowd reacted with a low, uncomfortable murmur. Al's smile flickered but stayed in place. He glanced toward the cameras, then back at Harry. "Fair enough. But you've also chosen to share certain parts of your family life in interviews and documentaries. So, some might say Harry cut him off sharply. Some might say that's always how it starts. Some might say critics argue sources claim it's lazy journalism wrapped in gossip." For the first time, Al's face showed a crack of irritation. He inhaled deeply and let out a small laugh, trying to soften it. "Well, I'll take the lazy journalism insult in stride. he said, his tone still gentle. But I think what our audience is looking for is authenticity. When you choose to share some things but refuse others, people naturally have questions. Harry leaned forward, eyes flashing. Authenticity doesn't mean I owe anyone every detail of my life. It means I speak when I choose about what I choose. You don't get to set the terms, Al. Neither does the press. Not anymore. The atmosphere grew tense enough to cut with a knife. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate as they zoomed in closer, capturing the frost in Harry's eyes and the patient steel in Al's expression. Al pivoted, voice still calm. Let's talk about your projects, then. Your production company has drawn attention, some praise, some criticism. There were reports that you and Meghan requested higher pay for your latest streaming series. Is that true? Harry gave a short laugh, dripping with contempt. Ah, the money question always comes up, doesn't it? No one ever asks how much the royal family costs the taxpayers. No, they just ask me how much Netflix pays. Maybe you should call up Buckingham Palace and request their receipts. The audience gasped audibly, some even laughing nervously. Al chuckled lightly, though it was clear his patience was thinning. Well, I think people ask because you've been very public about financial independence. So, naturally, deals like that raise interest. Harry's smirk hardened. Financial independence means I don't have to justify a single paycheck to you or anyone else. I walked away with nothing but my name. And if people can't handle that, I'm turning it into something valuable. That's their problem, not mine. The room was stiff, filled with the weight of his words. Al nodded, still calm, but with a firmness creeping into his tone. Fair enough. But when you talk about transparency and accountability, surely financial arrangements are part of that conversation. Harry's voice sharpened like a blade. No, Al. Transparency is about truth, not about pandering to a nosy public obsessed with how much I make. If they want transparency, maybe they should demand it from the people still wearing crowns and tiaras, not the one who walked away. The tension snapped like a live wire. The audience reacted with murmurs, some gasps, some claps. Al pressed his lips together, his patience clearly fraying. The segment cut once more to a break, but the audience knew the storm was only building. Harry wasn't backing down, and Al, the ever-patient anchor, was reaching his breaking point. The next segment, everyone could feel it, was going to explode. The music sting faded, and the cameras found their marks. Al Roker's smile returned, practiced and polite. But now it looked like it had been ironed into place. On the couch to his left, Hodok Cobb angled herself toward the guest, hands loosely laced, soft eyes doing their best to lower the temperature in the room. "Welcome back to Today," Al said, voice rich and steady. "We're here with Prince Harry, continuing our conversation about life, work, and the choices that come with public attention." Harry sat forward, elbows on knees, the tieless collar an intentional decision rather than an oversight. "I'm not here to perform," he said before Al could launch the next question. "Let's not pretend this is anything but another chance for the media to dissect me." Hoda stepped in gently. "No one's asking you to perform. We're listening, and I think a lot of people are rooting for you." "Really? They've watched you grow up." Harry's smile was thin. "They watched. That's the verb that got me here." Al nodded, keeping his tone warm. "Then let's talk about agency," he offered. "You choose projects now, documentaries, philanthropic initiatives. If you could name one thing you're proudest of this year, what is it?" "My refusal to be baited," Harry said crisply. A few audience members tittered. Al absorbed the jab. "Okay," he said, still friendly. "Let me try a specific lane, and you can steer me off it if you want. You and Meghan creatively. How do you keep one another honest? I ask a married guy. Sometimes my wife's note saves the whole broadcast." Harry's eyes flicked to him. "We don't need cutesy metaphors to justify working together. We're adults. We communicate, and we don't owe anyone a peek behind the door." Hod's laugh was light, non-threatening. "Fair," she said. "I think he was just asking about collaboration, not the color of your sofa." It's always the sofa next, Harry replied with a cool shrug. Al inhaled slowly. He let the moment pass like a passing squall and turned a card. There's a curiosity, fair or not, about your relationship with the institution you left. Some viewers still wonder if there's space for healing. Not headlines healing bag draped along the sofa's back like a dare. Healing doesn't mean pretending the fire never happened, Al. It means walking away from the ashes. And yet, Al said gently persistent, you speak about that fire often. Is there a path where you don't have to? Where your work stands alone? Harry's jaw worked. That's the plan, and the press is the obstacle. You collectively keep asking me where the smoke came from, then complain about the smell. A flicker crossed Al's face, a brief eclipse of patience. Hoda saw it and slid in like a mediator. Let's give the audience something they can use, she said kindly. A lot of people struggle with boundaries. What's one boundary you've drawn that's made your life meaningfully better? Harry's gaze softened by a millimeter. I don't answer questions just because they're asked. Hoda nodded. That's a good one. Al offered a small smile. And yet here you are. So let me ask one you can absolutely pass on. Your children. Not names, not stories, just what's the value you hope they grow up holding from you? Harry weighed the air for a heartbeat. It seemed he might let the drawbridge down, that they never mistake politeness for respect. He said, That's thoughtful, Al replied genuinely. So when people ask you about privacy while you're also, Harry cut in. There it is, always the pivot to the contradiction you've already decided exists. Al kept his voice low, even. I'm asking how you square it, that's all. By refusing to square for you, Harry said. Or for anyone who thinks they're owed the geometry of my life, the audience murmured. Hoda shifted again, palms open. Let's go wide angle, she said. You've described the monarchy as outdated. Some viewers hear that and feel attacked. Others applaud. What do you want people to understand when you say it? That duty without humanity is theater, Harry replied. And I'm done acting. Al nodded slowly. Some might hear that as a swipe at your family. Some might hear what they're paid to hear, Harry said, eyes cool. A tiny beat of silence. Then Al's baritone, still courteous. I'm not paid to hear anything. I'm paid to ask it. He glanced down, thumb whirring the corner of a card. Reports again. Reports suggest you and Meghan pushed for expanded budgets on upcoming projects. Scope, not gossip. Does bigger mean bolder? I don't pitch small, Harry said. Small is for people who are afraid to be seen. Or for people who want the work to be the star, Al offered friendly. But the line had an edge. Harry's smile didn't move. I don't need lessons on humility from a man tallying ratings between weather hits. A ripple moved through the audience. Hod's eyebrows rose. Then she exhaled and smiled warmly at the crowd. A human dimmer switch. All right, let's breathe, she said softly. Live TV is a ride. Al clased his hands. The smile remained, but the eyes were still now. Here's a question I think is fair. And you can say no. Is there anything you wish you'd handled differently? Just one thing since stepping back. Not for headlines, for yourself. Harry stared at Im. I wish I'd stopped believing that good faith existed in rooms with cameras. The audience went very still. Hod's gaze dipped, sympathy in it. Al nodded once. I hear the hurt in that, he said, sincerity washing through the sentence. Truly, Harry softened barely. Then let's not pretend this is a neutral exchange. Al's smile faded to something taut. I never said it was neutral. I said it was a conversation. And Harry tilted his head. Conversations don't arrive with preloaded doubts. They arrive with curiosity, Al countered. A trace of heat, and sometimes with inconvenient follow-ups. Hod touched Al's sleeve, a gentle anchor. We're almost out of time in this block, she said, eyes flicking between them. Maybe we can close with gratitude. One thing you're grateful for this week. Harry looked to the lights, then back at Al. That I can get up and walk when a room stops deserving my answers. A low ooh rolled through the audience. Al held the stare a beat too long. The veteran broadcaster in him tried to wrestle the morning back. All right, he said finally, voice composed but clipped. We're going to take one more quick break. When we return, we'll talk legacy, responsibility, and what accountability looks like when the spotlight is something you say you don't want. Harry laughed. Short dismissive. Accountability. That word again. Al's jaw tightened, and Hod's hand stayed on his sleeve a fraction longer than necessary. The music hit. The red light died. On set, no one moved. The crew pretended to check cables they'd already checked. The aircon hummed like a warning. Hod leaned toward Al, whispering, "Let me take the open." "Cool it down." Al didn't answer right away. Then quiet as a front rolling in. "He keeps calling questions an attack." "And you keep meeting him halfway," she replied. "One more segment, then we're out." Across from them, Harry rolled his shoulders, a boxer between rounds, eyes bright with the adrenaline of refusal. The floor manager counted down with raised fingers. 3, 2, 1. The theme music faded and the cameras panned back to the sofa. On the left, Al Roker sat upright, his smile now thinner than paper. Beside him, Hodakov leaned forward, still working to project warmth into the room. Across from them, Harry adjusted his blazer, settling into the cushions like a man daring the set to collapse beneath him. "Welcome back," Hoda began, her voice carrying that trademark gentleness. "We've been having an energetic conversation this morning, and I want to thank our guest for his honesty so far." Harry gave a tight nod. "Honesty is expensive, Ahod. Most people can't afford it." A ripple of uneasy laughter passed through the studio audience. Al cleared his throat, readying his card. "So," he said carefully, "let's talk legacy. A lot of people see you as someone who stepped away from tradition to build something new. What do you want that to look like 5 years from now?" Harry's lips curled into a smirk. "Legacy is a word the press invented to sell headlines. I want to live. That's all. Living is enough." "That's fair," Hoda said softly. But Al's patience had run out of rope. He leaned forward, voice still calm, but heavier now, like storm clouds rolling in. "Let me be straight," Al said. "Every answer this morning, it has dripped with contempt. Contempt for questions, for the press, for anyone who dares to ask you something you don't pre-approve. But you chose this stage. You walked into this room. Do you realize how it comes across?" Harry blinked, caught off guard by the sudden steel in Al's tone. "It comes across," he said slowly, "as a man refusing to bow just because someone with a microphone demands it." Al shook his head. "No, it comes across as arrogance. You talk about privacy while cashing checks from documentaries that trade on the very life you say you're protecting. You attack the monarchy, but build your entire brand on the royalty you claim to despise. And here, right here, you dismiss this audience, this crew, this network, as if we're beneath you. That isn't courage, Harry. That's hypocrisy." The audience gasped audibly. Hod's hands shot out, fingers brushing Al's arm in a silent plea to cool down. But the dam had already burst. Harry's face flushed crimson. "Hypocrisy. You sit here in your studio, fattened by corporate dollars, pretending you're the moral compass of America." "I don't pretend," Alan re-upped, voice sharp now. "I show up day after day. I ask tough questions, and I don't bite the hand that gives me the platform." The silence that followed was suffocating. The crew froze. The studio audience leaned forward, hanging on every syllable. Harry stood suddenly, the chair screeching against the floor. "I don't have to sit here and be insulted on live television," he snapped. "This entire charade proves why I left the system in the first place." Al rose too, meeting him eye to eye. Decades of broadcasting experience holding him steady. "And this proves why so many people are done giving you sympathy. You want the perks without the accountability. You want the fame without the questions. And frankly, this show doesn't need it." Hota stood now as well, trying desperately to mediate. "Gentlemen, please, let's all take a breath." But it was too late. Harry grabbed his notes, his jaw clenched tight, and turned toward the exit. "I don't need this," he said, his voice loud enough to echo, "and I certainly don't need you." The cameras caught every step as he stormed off set. The door banged open, then shut behind him, leaving only stunned silence in his wake. Al faced the audience, breathing hard but regaining his professional composure. "Folks," he said, lowering his voice, "I want to apologize. You came here for a conversation, and it turned into something else entirely. That was not the intention. Sometimes live television takes turns none of us expect, and I'm sorry you had to witness that." The audience broke into uneasy applause, unsure whether they were supporting the apology or the confrontation itself. Hod placed a hand gently on Al's shoulder and turned to the cameras. "We'll be right back." The red light blinked off. The set exhaled, but across the country, millions of viewers were already texting, posting, and tweeting about the moment the prince stormed off the Today Show. It was the kind of live TV explosion that would be replayed for years. A clash between entitlement and exasperation, between a prince who refused to bend and a host who finally broke. And by the end, only one of them was still sitting in the chair. If you were shocked by this explosive showdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more unbelievable live TV moments, and ring this so you never miss the next clash caught on camera. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Was the host right to call him out?